52 seconds. That is all it took. 52 seconds for Marjorie Taylor Greene to sit in complete silence after Hakeem Jeffries set a printed transcript on the table, looked her directly in the eye, and asked the one question that the President of the United States had already answered by calling her a traitor for asking it. "You said Trump told you his friends would get hurt if the Epstein files came out. Name them. Not a complicated request. Not a legal trap. Just a name. One name. From a woman who had stood in front of cameras for months saying the American people deserve to know every name, every transfer, every connection. Now sitting in a hearing room with the person asking her to do exactly what she said she wanted to do. And 52 seconds of silence that said more than any answer could have. You need to see this until the very end, because what Jeffries uncovered in that hearing room is not just about the Epstein files. It is about what happens when someone inside the machine tries to tell the truth about it. It is about a phone call, a threat, 700 death threats, and a president who called his most loyal congresswoman a traitor for refusing to protect the names he did not want named. If you are new to this channel, subscribe right now and turn on notifications. This hearing just became the most important testimony of the year, and you need to see every second of what happened next. Let me set the scene for you. House Oversight Committee, Room 2157. Thursday morning, 10:02 a.m. Eastern Time. The room had a quality it had not had in any of the other hearings this series has covered. Something older, heavier. The other hearings had been about documents, voting records, fundraising data, trading timelines. This hearing was about something that does not fit neatly into a disclosure form or a GAO report. This hearing was about what a president said to a congresswoman in a private phone call that she then described publicly, and what that statement, if true, means for every other question anyone has ever asked about Jeffrey Epstein and the people connected to him. Everyone in that room understood the weight of what they were about to hear. Every journalist, every committee member, every aide and attorney and camera operator. Because if the most powerful person in the country told one of his most loyal supporters that releasing sealed files would hurt his friends, then the question of who those friends are is not a political question anymore. It is a factual one, and Hakeem Jeffries had come to that room to ask it. Jeffries arrived first. No thick folder this time, just 3 documents, clean and precise. He sat down and he looked at them for a moment. He did not review them. He had already reviewed them many times. He was just sitting with them, thinking about the weight of what he was about to do. Then Greene arrived. 3 attorneys, 2 aides, that walk. But something was different this time. The confident forward momentum that had been present in every other hearing room was still there, but underneath it was something else. Something that had not been there before. Not fear, not weakness, just the particular gravity of someone who has been through something that changed them and cannot fully hide that it did. She had received 700 death threats. Her son had been directly threatened. A pipe bomb threat had been called into her house and her construction company. The President of the United States, the man she had voted with 98% of the time, the man she had called her favorite president of all time just months before, had called her a traitor on a public platform, and then watched while the threats poured in. She was still standing, but she was standing differently than she had stood in the other rooms. She sat at the witness table. She checked her phone. She looked across at Jeffries. He was already looking at her. Not hostile. Not triumphant, just present. The particular attentiveness of someone who has been in minority leadership for years and understands that the most important moments in any room are not the ones where you are loudest. They are the ones where you ask the question nobody else will ask. The first 20 minutes were standard procedure. Committee counsel handled background questions, the timeline of the Epstein Files Transparency Act, the discharge petition process. Greene answered each one steadily, factually, with the particular precision of someone who has spent months fighting for something and knows the details of that fight down to the hour. She was composed, she was clear. She had lived this story and she knew every beat of it. She thought she knew how this session was going to go. Then Hakeem Jeffries took the microphone. Congresswoman Greene. The room shifted in the way it shifts when a question has been building for a long time and everyone in the room knows it is finally about to be asked. Greene looked up. "I want to start with something you said publicly." Jeffries reached into his small stack of documents. He pulled out the first one, a printed excerpt. He did not rush. He set it flat on the table, facing the cameras. He looked at it for a moment. Then he looked at Greene. "This is from a New York Times Magazine profile published on December 29, 2025. In it, you describe a phone call you received from President Trump following a September news conference at which you appeared alongside Jeffrey Epstein's survivors. You describe Trump as having told you, in your own words, that he opposed the release of the Epstein files because his friends would get hurt." He looked up. Not the women, not the country, his friends. He set the document down. He looked at Greene directly. "You said that publicly, in a major national publication. Under your own name." He paused. "I have one question." He leaned slightly toward the microphone. "Who are Trump's friends that would get hurt by the release of the Epstein files?" Silence. Not the brief pause of someone formulating a response. The specific, loaded silence of someone who has just been asked the question they have been circling around for months. The question that the discharge petition was about. The question that the 700 death threats were about. The question that the traitor label was about. The question that the resignation was about. All of it, every piece of it, had been pointing toward this exact question, and now it was in the room. Out loud, on the record, in a congressional hearing. Greene's lead attorney moved immediately. He leaned toward her. She did not look at him. She was looking at Jeffries. Something was happening in her expression that had not happened in any of the other hearing rooms in this series, not the controlled flatness of prepared testimony, not the calculating steadiness of someone managing their exposure, something more unresolved. The expression of someone who is trying to decide in real time whether the answer they have been holding is one they can finally give. If you have made it this far and this matters to you, subscribe right now and turn on notifications. What Jeffries places on the table next is the document that no major network covered when this hearing aired. The piece of this that connects everything. Stay with this until the end. Jeffries did not wait for the attorney. He reached into his stack and pulled out the second document. He held it up long enough for every camera in the room to capture it. Then he placed it flat on the table. "This is your resignation statement, published November 21st, 2025. He found the relevant passage. He read from it. Quote, "Standing up for American women who were raped at 14, trafficked and used by rich, powerful men, should not result in me being called a traitor and threatened by the President of the United States, whom I fought for." End quote. He set the resignation statement down next to the Times profile excerpt. He looked at Greene. "You used the phrase rich, powerful men." He tapped the Times profile excerpt. "Trump said his friends would get hurt." He tapped the resignation statement. "You said rich, powerful men." He looked at Greene. "Are those the same people?" Greene's second attorney was whispering urgently. Greene was still looking at Jeffries. Her hands were on the table. Flat, still. In the same position her hands had been in during the stock trading hearing, the January 6th hearing, the Freedom Caucus hearing. But this time there was something different in the stillness. Not the controlled stillness of someone managing their exposure, the stillness of someone standing at a threshold. Her voice, when it came, was quieter than it had been in any of the other rooms. "Congressman Jeffries." She stopped. She looked at her hands. She looked back up. "I described that conversation because I believed the American people had a right to know that the President of the United States was personally opposed to the release of files that his own supporters had been demanding for years." She paused. "When I said his friends would get hurt, I was relaying what he told me. I do not know specifically who he meant." Jeffries looked at her for a moment. He wrote something on his notepad. Then he looked up. He said quietly, "You do not know, or you are not saying." A very small thing happened in Greene's expression. The almost imperceptible shift of someone who has just been asked a question with perfect precision, the two options laid out with complete clarity. Not know or not saying. And the answer to which one was true was visible in the half-second before she could arrange her response. "Congressman, my attorneys have advised me that I should not speculate about the identities of individuals who may or may not be referenced in sealed federal documents. There are ongoing legal proceedings, and I want to be respectful of those boundaries." Jeffries nodded slowly. He wrote something. Then he looked up. He picked up the third document from his stack. He held it up. Then he placed it flat on the table with the other two. "This is a statement you made at a November 18th news conference, standing alongside Jeffrey Epstein survivors on Capitol Hill." He found the line. He read it. Quote, "We have fought the most horrific fight against the most powerful people in the world, even the President of the United States, in order to make this vote happen." End quote. He set it down. He looked at Greene. "The most powerful people in the world." He tapped the Times profile, Trump's friends. He tapped the resignation statement, rich, powerful men. He tapped the news conference statement, the most powerful people in the world. He looked at Greene. 3 statements, 3 different ways of describing the same group of people. He leaned slightly forward. "You have described them 3 times in 3 different ways. I am asking you to describe them one more time, with names. Now I need to stop for a second. If you believe that the American people have a right to know who the President of the United States was protecting when he called his most loyal Congresswoman a traitor, hype this video right now. The hype button is right next to like. You can hype 3 times a day for free. We have 7 days to get this into the top 100 most hyped videos on YouTube. Every single hype counts. Do it now. Then keep watching, because what happens in the next 52 seconds is the moment this entire series has been building toward." Greene's lead attorney stood fully. "Congressman Jeffries, my client has already indicated that she cannot speculate about sealed federal proceedings. This line of questioning is asking her to do precisely that, and I must object to. Sit down, counselor." Jeffries's voice had not changed in volume. It had simply become more precise. The precision of someone who has been in legislative leadership for years and understands that the most powerful thing you can do in a room is stay exactly as calm as you are. Your client made 3 separate public statements describing a group of people connected to sealed Epstein files. She described them as Trump's friends. She described them as rich, powerful men. She described them as the most powerful people in the world. He looked at the attorney. Those statements are already public. She already said them. I am not asking her to reveal sealed documents. I am asking her to be as specific in this room under oath as she was in front of those cameras. He looked back at Greene. "The attorney can sit down." The attorney sat down. Slowly. 52 seconds. A committee aide counted it independently. A journalist in the front row checked her phone and confirmed the number with a colleague. 52 seconds, where Marjorie Taylor Greene, the woman who had been called a traitor for asking this same question, who had received 700 death threats for pursuing it, who had resigned from Congress rather than let the people who threatened her win, sat completely silent. Her hands were flat on the table. Her attorneys were both still. The room held its breath in a way it had not held its breath in any of the previous 6 hearings, because this was not a question about stock trades or voting records or fundraising patterns or text messages. This was the question underneath all of those questions, the one that explained why she had been called a traitor, the one that explained why the threats had come, the one that explained why a man who had been her political partner for 5 years had turned on her with the specific ferocity of someone who needed her to stop. Drop a comment right now. Tell me what 52 seconds of silence from the person who has already said these names exist means. Because the names are still out there, still sealed, still protected. And the woman who fought hardest to unseal them is sitting in silence because giving them to this room is a different kind of fight than the one she already survived. When Greene finally spoke, her voice was the quietest it had been in any hearing room across this entire series. "Congressman Jeffries." She stopped. She looked at her hands. Then she looked up, not at Jeffries, at the cameras. She said, "I stood with the women. I fought for the files. I took the threats. I resigned rather than let them use me to make other members afraid." She paused. "And I am still here." She looked at Jeffries. "The names you are asking about are in those files. The files are now public record. Every American can read them." She paused. "I am not going to say them in this room, not because I am protecting anyone, but because the women who survived what those names did to them deserve to be the ones who decide when and how and where those names are spoken out loud. That is not my right to take from them." The room was completely still, not the charged silence of people waiting for the next question, the deep, held silence of people who have just heard something that did not fit the shape of any answer they were expecting. It was not a legal evasion. It was not a Fifth Amendment invocation. It was not a prepared talking point. It was something else entirely. And every person in that room was sitting with it trying to understand what it was. Jeffries looked at her for a long moment. He did not write anything on his notepad. He just looked at her. Then he looked at the committee. Then he looked at the cameras. Then he looked back at Greene one final time. He said, in a voice that was very quiet, "You were called a traitor. You received 700 death threats. You resigned from Congress." He picked up the 3 documents together, the Times profile, the resignation statement, the news conference statement. He held them as a set. "And through all of that, you kept saying the same thing. The women deserve the truth. The names should come out. The files should be public." He set the 3 documents down side by side. He looked at Greene. "History is going to remember what you did in this room and in the rooms before it." He paused. "And the names in those files, the ones Trump said would hurt his friends, the ones you called rich and powerful, the ones the women are deciding when to speak, those names are going to come out." He picked up his documents. "Not because of what I ask in this room, because of what you refuse to stop asking outside of it." He gathered his 3 pages back into his small stack. He set them down. He looked at Greene one final time. "I did not come here today to trap you." He said it simply. "I came because the American people heard a president call one of his most loyal supporters a traitor for asking a question. They deserve to understand what that question was about." He looked at the cameras. "Now they do." He stepped back from the microphone. "I yield back, Mr. Chairman." The room held the silence for a moment longer than usual after he stepped back. Nobody moved immediately, not the journalists, not the committee members, not Greene's attorneys, not Greene. The particular stillness of a room that has just witnessed something it will be trying to understand for a long time. Then, slowly, the room began to move again. Journalists typing, committee members shuffling papers, attorneys whispering, the mechanical sounds of a hearing room returning to its normal functions. But something had changed in the air of it, something that did not go away when the gavel finally closed the session 40 minutes later. Because Hakeem Jeffries had walked into that room and done something that no questioner in any of the 6 previous hearings had done. He had not tried to catch her in a contradiction. He had not tried to break her. He had asked the question that everything else had been circling around, the question that the traitor label was about, the question that the threats were about, the question that the resignation was about. And he had gotten 52 seconds of silence, followed by something that was not an evasion, something that was closer to a door being held open than a door being shut. Within the hour, the clips were everywhere. Jeffries reading the 3 statements side by side, Greene looking at the cameras rather than at Jeffries, the 52 seconds of silence, and then the answer that nobody in that room had fully predicted. Legal analysts were noting that Greene's response, specifically her statement that the names are in those files and every American can read them, constituted a public directive that the released Epstein documents should be actively read and cross-referenced against the descriptions she had given. Journalists who cover the Epstein case were already pulling the released documents against every name that fit the descriptions. Trump's friends, rich, powerful men, the most powerful people in the world. This is not the end of this story. It is the question that opens the door to the rest of it. The files are public. The names are in them. A woman who was called a traitor for saying so is leaving the building for the last time. And the question Jeffries asked in that room? The one Greene answered with 52 seconds of silence, and then a statement about who deserves the right to speak those names, is now in the congressional record, permanently, alongside every other document from every other hearing in this series. 6 hearings, 7 silences, 1 series, the insider trades, the Capitol Reach email, the Russian state TV broadcast, the martial law text message, the McCarthy donor network, the stock trading ban votes, and now this, a phone call, a phrase, friends who would get hurt, and a woman who fought for those names until the most powerful person in the country called her a traitor for it. Share this video everywhere. The Epstein files are public. The congressional record contains all 7 hearings. The documents exist. The names are in them. And the conversation that should have happened years ago is finally, slowly, beginning to happen, 1 document at a time, 1 hearing at a time, 1 silence at a time. Subscribe now, hit the bell. This series continues. The MTG story ends here. But the story of what she was asking about does not end anywhere. It ends when the names are named. And that has not happened yet. 52 seconds, 3 documents, 1 phone call, 1 phrase, friends who would get hurt, and the most loyal congresswoman in MAGA history sitting in the last hearing room of her congressional career, telling the cameras that the women who survived are the ones who get to decide. The names are in the files. The files are public. The rest is up to you.